And on the farm now, we had many activities, and we raised cotton, corn, beans. We always had plenty of produce and whatnot. Uh, so it, it was really, it was a happy experience there with my.
So what was some of your earliest childhood memories? How far can you go back?
I can go back to, I remember briefly my grandfather in his last days there because he lived with us. And I can remember him, but mostly what I remember about my grandfather, that he always had a heavy mustache and a beard and whatnot, and uh, he never would discipline us. If we did something wrong, my grandfather always would tell my older sister, said the boys did this or the boys did that. But as far as the discipline, he never did discipline us. And that was briefly because my grandfather passed in 1935. Well, at that particular time, I was only like 4 or 5 years old. But I do remember my grandfather. My grandparents, that was the only one that I remember was my grandfather on my father's side. My grandparents on my mother's side, I don't have any memory of them.
So what was school like in Georgia in those days?
School was, we had to walk approximately, I say 3/4 of a mile to get to school. And it was a community school, and it was a one-room school when I started. And I guess there was approximately 35 or 40 children in that school, and you had one teacher, and she taught from like what we call kindergarten now through the 6th grade. And all of the children was in one room, and the teacher would take one class at a time, and all. And when I look back at it, and I realize how difficult that must have been, but I still give the teachers a lot of credit for what they was able to accomplish under those circumstances there. So.
So were you allowed to go to school with white kids?
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Not that. After we had built, moved, and built our new house, the school bus went right past our house, and sometimes there was only 2 or 3 children on it. I mean, white children, but we couldn't ride the bus. I never did attend school with the white children during my whole school period there.
So do you remember any discrimination as a child? Do you remember seeing any discrimination? Do you remember hearing about lynchings or anything like that?
The county that I was raised up in, which was Washington County, Georgia, it was considered a good county as far as African American. But I've heard of some of the adjacent counties where they were lynching, but far as Washington County, no. But discrimination, yes, I've seen discrimination. The places that we couldn't go, drugstores or whatnot, if you make a purchase, like at the fountain, you couldn't eat, whatnot. Whatever you got, you had to get it and go. And some of the restaurants, the waiters or waitresses there, instead of wrapping the food, they would put the food on the counter that everybody had used and whatnot. Yeah, I experienced that and whatnot. I didn't experience as much segregation and discrimination as a lot of people because I was raised up in an all African American community, and we raised our food and whatnot, so we didn't have to depend on anyone else So therefore, we didn't have to come in contact with people, of other races and whatnot. We were self-supporting. We lived on the farm. We raised all our meats, and we always had produce coming from the gardens and whatnot. And then we had a community cannery where people would do their canning. They would plant at a certain time, and then they would can their goods. So therefore, no, we didn't have a lot of contact as far as doing work. The only time that I can remember doing work after I started attending high school, and it wasn't a private school, it was a public school, but we lived in the country. We didn't have transportation to go backwards and forward, so we had to live in the city of Sandersville. And we stayed there during the week, and we would come home once a week. And there, while we was there, we would do, after school, we would go to various parts of the city looking for work. And that's what the children did. And that's the only time that I came in contact with dealing with white people, to say, was if I was doing some work there. But when I was in the country, we didn't. In fact, about it, my father always said there was enough work on the farm that we didn't need to go out and work for anyone else,
So how were you addressed when you lived in Georgia? Were you addressed as Mr. Dawson? Did Caucasians call you Mr. Dawson? Did they call you boy? Did they call you Eugene? Did they call you nigger? Come here. How did they address you back then?
Like I say, I never did come in contact with people not like that.
Well, when you were looking for work, remember you said you used to have to look for work?
Oh, yeah, when I was high school age, looking for work. Yeah, they would address you sometime as boy, but most of them would address me by my name. And I had some good experience, and I met some nice people of other races while I was there. This one lady, she wanted my sister and I, to come live with her while we were going to school. And but she was an older lady, and she didn't realize the implication of segregation at that particular time. She'd forgotten about it.
And this was a Caucasian lady?
She was a Caucasian lady, yeah. And I used to go after school. I used to go up there and I would do different chores for her, and we would make a little money. And it was enough money sometimes for us to go to a movie and whatnot and buy some of the things, that young people would buy and whatnot. But she was a very nice person. I would see her uptown, this lady, the same lady, and she would call me, said, Eugene, come help me cross the street, because she was an elderly lady, And I guess a lot of people would look at me helping this, this white lady cross the street there. But she addressed me by my name. For the N-word or whatnot, during my whole time there, I've heard it used once, and it wasn't used directly to me. There was two white guys walking up the street, and one said that someone owed him some money, and the other one asked him what, and he said it must have been, said well, it had to be a nigger, he said, which he used. But far as a person using that to me, they may have used it behind my back, but to my face, no, never.
So how did you end up coming to Ohio?
Well, the first time I came to Ohio, after I graduated from high school, I knew I wanted to go to college, and I knew the funds was limited. So my brother was already in Warren and working, and I came up here and I worked that summer at the coat plant, and I made enough money to buy the necessary clothes and also my tuition to go to Albany State. So that fall, I worked that summer. That was 1948. And I worked that summer, and I enrolled at Albany State, and they was on the quarterly system the first year I went there, and the first quarter of the second year I attended Albany State. My funds ran out, so I left.
Was that a historically black college, or it was an integrated college?
No, no, no. It was a black college, approximately 1,000 students, and it was a state school, Albany State College, but it was a 4-year institution.
And that would have been in what year roughly that you attended there your first year?
48, 49. Yeah, the school year 48, 49. And after that, I had a brother living in West Palm Beach, Florida. So I went to West Palm Beach, and I stayed there for approximately 1 year. And I worked at a towel plant where they made cement towel for roofing there in West Palm Beach. And my brothers and all, I had brothers and sisters in Warren, and we was always supposed to have met at Jordan Station AME Church in Sandersville, which they have in October, what they call camp meeting. And we was all gonna meet. I was coming from Florida, they was coming from Ohio, and we was going to meet.
Can you explain what a camp meeting is?
Well, a camp meeting is really where they have different sermons during the day, and a camp meeting. They also have plenty of food. Everybody contribute. Everybody bring food. Everybody eats together and whatnot. And they call it camp meeting, but it's really not a camp. It's on the church ground, because we had the church and the school all on the same ground there, same campus there. But they call it camp meeting. At that particular time they did, but now they call it more or less like homecoming now, so yeah.
So you were saying your family was supposed to have met at the camp meeting, all of your brothers and sisters?
They did. We were supposed, I came up from Florida. Some of the family came down from Ohio, but my brother Emery, en route to Sandersville, he had an accident in Georgetown, Kentucky. And my sister ended up in the hospital because she had a fractured leg. And so my brother, it was property damage, so he ended up in jail there in Georgetown, Kentucky. So rather for me to go back to Florida, we had to come to make sure that we made arrangements to get him out of jail in Georgetown, Kentucky. And that's the reason, because my intent was to come to Sandersville for the camp meeting and then to return to Florida, because I had a job there, and wages was comparable to what I would have been making here. So, but that's the reason. And so I got with my older brothers, and we came to Georgetown, Kentucky, and was able to get him out of jail. So we all came, and so I came back to Warren, and that was in 1951.
Okay, so I want to go back to Kentucky in 1948. I mean, was that scary dealing with your brother being in jail back then, being that Kentucky was still considered the South?
Well, it wasn't. It wasn't scary. But like I said, it was supposed to have been like a homecoming, and by them having accident en route there, it really did. It really more or less it just disrupted the whole.
But why did they arrest him just because he got in an accident?
Well, he was in. Like I said, he was in an accident, and he did property damage. And I don't know about insurance than whether the insurance covered it or not, and they wanted to make sure that that he made some kind of restitution for that damage that was done.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, so hence you end up in Warren
In
again.
Again, yeah, 1951. So, yeah.
And you started working where?
I started working at U.S. Steel back in I believe it was, October, early November
And where was that located?
in McDonald, Ohio.
Were there a lot of African Americans working at U.S. Steel back then?
Yes, they were. They were a lot, but mostly from Youngstown, Girard, and a few from McDonald, and also from Warren. There was some from Warren too, back in Warren. But steel mill at that particular time, when I started to work at U.S. Steel, they weren't any African Americans with a job class higher than class 4, which is no more than just labor, really, you know. So it was, and they was some mills, some foremen. It depends on, because I started in the labor, more or less like a labor pool, which was reshare. And if a mill wanted a labor, and depends on what the job was, some of the foremen, they would request that wanted to make sure that the person they requested was white. So it was a lot of discrimination there in the plants then.
So how long did you work at U.S. Steel?
I worked at U.S. Steel for 30 years there. That's 30 years including my service time too.
So do you remember the first time that they elevated or promoted an African American at the U.S. Steel?
Well, most of the promotion came after that consent decree came out, and then there were promotion.
I believe that was in 1974.
Yeah. Well, even before then, there was some promotion because there was a lot of us young people that had gotten together, and we made sure that we put pressure on them. I won't use the words demand, but we made sure that we moved up. And because in the steel mill, the way it was, you moved according to your seniority. But a lot of the older guys, a lot of the African Americans that had migrated from the South, a lot of them from Alabama, Mississippi, and whatnot, and I guess that more or less they just accepted whatever, as long as they was working, and they accepted that. And I would always share with them, I said, I want the same thing for my family that CEO wants for his family, and whatnot. And more or less that we demanded that, and it wasn't easy.
So what type of pressure did you all put on the company?
Well, what it is, whenever a job would come open, we would bid for it. And we would make sure if our seniority entitled us to that job, then we demanded that job.
Did you have a union?
We did have a union.
So unions were instrumental in helping African Americans in the workforce.
Absolutely. Because see, what was happening prior to that, jobs would come open and they would put bids up, but they wouldn't post the bid. So therefore, a lot of people didn't even know it, and then a lot of so therefore they didn't bid for it. The only thing they would know that someone was in the job, on that job, and that person didn't look like them, and they accepted that. Because when like I said, I started there. I worked there for 30 years, and I started as a laborer. And when they closed that plant in 1981, I had a class job 20, and there was only one job higher, and my brother Lee, which is younger than I, and he was a roller, and that's the highest job was on the mill there. But like I say, nobody didn't offer those jobs. I mean, you had to fight for them, and whatnot. And I knew I was capable of doing it, you know. So, and that's the way it worked.
So what were some of the ways that you all had to fight for them? Did you have meetings? Did you have protests? Did you go to the NAACP?
We didn't know. No, we didn't do that. We just watched the job opening as people retired and whatnot, and we knew that we knew the status of our seniority, and if a job came open, and we knew that that job was going up for bid, it had to go up for bid. We made sure that we went in and bid for it, you know, and not only that, as the younger people was coming in, and we would try to always inform them as the different departments to try to get in and whatnot, and let them know that, see, people are reluctant to give you anything. I mean, so most of the time you got to fight for it, you know what I mean? If you don't say anything, they'll just go right over you. I remember one experience there that I had in the mill, and a job came open. It was temporarily, but they had pulled a guy off another mill and placed him on that job. And when I found out, I went into office and I asked him, I said, well, why is this person on that job? And he told me, he said, Gene, he said, I didn't think you wanted that job. And I told him, I said, look, I said, when did I give you authority to think for me? And I said, whenever a job come open, I said, it is my decision whether to accept it or not. I said, it's not for you to make the decision. So after that, I didn't have no more problem. He said, well, I'll let him stay on there the first 4 hours of the turn. He said, but you will get paid for the whole day. And see, after that, he said, you go back there and work. And I had no more problem with it. I didn't have a lot of problem with supervision out there because they knew that whatever it was, if I was entitled for it, that they weren't just going to pass me over, you know what I mean? You let people know where you stand up front, then they don't try to run over you a lot of time. You know, people will try to pull a lot of different schemes and whatnot on you. But if you let them know and whatnot, and then always try to qualify yourself to be able to accept a move up, because with any kind of move up, there's usually more responsibility. So always be in a position to do that. Yeah.
So as a distinguished steel worker, can you describe what it was like working in a steel mill for 30-something years? Because in the beginning, I'm sure, wasn't it somewhat segregated? Didn't they have most of the black men working in one part of the steel mill and most of the white people working in another part of the steel mill?
Definitely.
And what kind of jobs did the black steel workers do as opposed to the white steel workers?
Well, yeah, they did. Like different shops they had. There was no blacks working in the different shop, machine shop and whatnot. At U.S. Steel inspection, there were no blacks working in inspection. There was no black, when I started there was no black crane there. Like I said, there was no blacks at U.S. Steel with a class higher than class 4. I remember the first person that went up in the crane, it was an overhead crane, and the first black person that went up there, and some people tried to refuse to work with that person, said that person wasn't safe and whatnot. And so, no, yeah, definite. There was departments that you could not get in. And they was hiring white people off the street. They were bringing them in on a class 12 job. And on a class 12 job, and you had a black person been there for 15, 20 years, his helper working a class 4 job. You know, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And so what types of jobs when you first started did black steel workers do? What type of labor jobs? Was it dirty? Was it Describe it.
Well, when I first started to work, U.S. Steel didn't have a lot of dirty jobs.
So it wasn't like the Coke plant.
No, it wasn't. No, and then we processed steel, but we didn't make steel there. We didn't make steel. They did that at Ohio Work. You know, it was a clean place to work. But some of those jobs, like reshear, and it was heavy work. It was heavy work, and if you didn't know how to work it, for a person said like 130 pounds or something like that, it could be challenging for that person. But yeah, and but as far as a lot of dirty job, we didn't. But a lot of them, there was manual labor. You know, it was manual labor, wherein when you was hired in, and that was even like 1965, when you was hired in, maybe they was hiring, say, 10 people, maybe 2 would be black and the rest would be white. Well, when you hired in, they all would come in together. But after a couple of weeks, then they started thinning them out. They send the white to different departments where they could move up or where it was better working conditions and whatnot. But the blacks, they would try to put them on those rough jobs. My brother Lee and I, because we went to the foreman, we asked him one time, said, why is it you send all of the blacks over on this particular mill, which was 11 mill, which was a harsh mill to work on, and you send the whites something like that? He said, well, it's the same. He says it's the same pay. I said, yeah, it may be the same pay, but it's not the same working condition, you know, and all. So, you know, things like that. And a lot of people overlook things like that, and because a lot of people had given him credit, you know, by being such a nice person. I said, no. I said, he's not a nice person. I said, because I said that person, I said, he got so much prejudice in him, you know, and all. And because he goes to Sunday school, teach Sunday school, I said, it doesn't make him a nice person, you know. I said, I watch a person action, not what a person does, you know. Yeah. So yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot because most people was hired in. They went through the reshear, and that was the labor pool at U.S. Steel. Now other places they may, you know, it's different places. But yeah.
So when you retired, you told me you were a class
20. I was a heater.
Oh, a heater?
A heater, yeah.
And describe what a heater does at U.S. Steel.
A heater does, well, you have the furnace. You put the billets in the furnace, just like you would put a pie, say, in the oven. And you would heat it up to a certain temperature because you got to roll it to the customer's specification. And it has to be a certain temperature. And that's what you had to do. But you also, there we had, well, I would say antiquated furnaces. We didn't have instruments to tell us the heat of the steel. You had to look at the steel and tell about what heat it was. And usually it was run from around 19 to 2200 degrees. And you had to look at that steel because if you got it too hot, you was going to melt it. And depending on what type of steel, if it was alloy or something like that, you could easily burn it. And if you burn it, you just destroyed it. So you had to look at it. And so that was my job, to heat the furnace according to the specification that it called for. And that's what I did for the last 7 years that I worked there.
And so in total, how many years again did you work at U.S. Steel?
I worked 30 years at U.S. Steel. I worked there until they closed it in 1980 or 1981. And after that...
Did you work there up until the very last day that it closed?
Not to the last day it was closed. Probably, no, because they probably had money.
So did you retire or you...
I retired.
You retired.
I had enough time to retire from U.S. Steel, but I also worked at Copperwell Steel So
After you left U.S. Steel?
after I left U.S. Steel, because I wasn't old enough for Social Security or anything, and definitely that pension wasn't enough to sustain me. So I was really blessed to get on at Copperwell Steel.
And how long did you work at Copperwell Steel?
I worked 10 years at Copperwell. I worked 10 years there.
And so were you able to keep the same type of job that you had at U.S. Steel?
No, absolutely not. No, I started in Copperwell as a laborer because, like I said, steel mills are based on seniority. And it was a woman, she was in charge, I can't think of her name, in charge of personnel at Copperwell. And I told her about my experience and at U.S. Steel, you know, and my job classification and whatnot. And she said, well, so you would be good, so they could use you in the soaking pit at Copperwell. Well, I knew that I wouldn't be able to get a job because, like I said, everything is based on seniority there. Most of those jobs, you're not hired in on those jobs. But I was really blessed to work at Copperwell because Copperwell really was a much better paying steel mill than U.S. Steel was there. So I worked 10 years there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me what you remember about the consent decree as it relates to steel mills.
Well,
how did it come about? Why did there have to be a need for a consent decree?
Well, it had to be a need for a consent decree because of discrimination. Because all of those years, I said that African Americans in particular, I can say there may have been other people too that been, but I know African Americans, they had been discriminated against for all of those years that they had worked in the steel mill. I mean, wherever you started, that's just about where you was going to end up. I don't care whether you had 1 year or 40 years in there. You still was just a labor. And they would pull people from the street and put them on jobs that you were entitled to. But but you just didn't get them. You didn't get them. And there was many ways that they could get around it. They would find a way of getting around it. Yeah, we was union, all right, and I give the union a lot of credit. But when that consent decree came around, that many people was able to move up into the positions that they was entitled to for years there, you know.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me about life in Warren, Ohio as a young adult. Do you remember discrimination in the city of Warren?
I don't remember. I could see a lot of discrimination.
Such as?
Such as the movies, the parks, and whatnot.
What about the parks?
Well, the parks. I remember Packard Park, you know, with the swimming pool. And I think when I came here in well, I won't say 1948 because I only was here briefly in 1948, but when I came here in 1951, I'm not sure if that swimming pool was open to black. If so, it was limited, you know. Yeah, there was discrimination. Movies downtown now, if you went in, if you was black, they tried to usher you up to the balcony and whatnot. Harris Theater, that was over on High Street. They didn't particularly like blacks in there, period, you know. So yeah, there was discrimination. Drug stores and places like that, yeah.
And you mentioned something about Gray's drugstore?
Yeah, Greg's drugstore, they didn't want you sitting at the counter there. You know, if you had ice cream or pop or whatnot, or sandwich or whatnot, yeah, there was discrimination. They were, I didn't frequent a lot of bars and whatnot, but there was bars that didn't want to serve you. Yeah, yeah, there were bars that wanted to serve. A lot of them I've heard. I never had that experience where they would even, if they were serving you like draft beer or something, and they would serve it to you, and once you finish, take the glass and break it, throw it in, things like that they would do. Yeah.
So you are a community activist. I know I've given you a community award for my appreciation for what you've done in the 6th Ward as well as in the city. So tell me, how did you become a community activist, someone interested in making our community a better place to live?
Well, one reason that I did, because like I joined, the Community Concerned Citizen, and one of my main focus was that I could see the deterioration of the African American community, and I was concerned about it. I was concerned about cars parked on the lawns, and I could just see the deterioration, because one thing, the way I look at it, a home and a car is usually your largest purchase in life. And if you don't take care of that, to me, you're just wasting your money. Because I believe in wherever I live, I don't care whether it's Golf Course Drive or Maple Street. My Maple Street to me, is the same as Golf Course Drive, and I want it to be the best that it can be. And the only way it can be that I'm going to have to take care of it and maintain it the best I can. And that was my concern, and that still is my concern. I don't care who live beside me or in front of me or whatnot, as long as that person is a respectable person, that's fine with me. Yeah, so that's one thing. And I would like to see opportunities. I'm concerned now about the flight of so many people leaving Warren, because I can remember what the population was when I came to Warren and what it is now. But I said, but there got to be opportunities for people to stay. Otherwise, they're going to leave, So, yeah.
Okay, and so you said you joined the Community Concerned Citizens. Okay, have you been active in any other organizations? I know you're active in your church. Tell me about your church life. How did you become so involved in church life?
Well, I've always, I always attend churches. When I was down south, my father was the superintendent of the Sunday school, and he also was a steward, which is the same as in the Baptist church, a deacon. And so I've always been active in church. And when I came here, I got a little lax. I didn't attend for a while. And so after I got married and whatnot, my wife joined before I did. And so I was attending church, but I had not joined. And my sister was a member of Friendship. My wife joined Friendship, and she came out of a different denomination. And so I joined Friendship, and whatever that I'm involved in, I like to try to be active in it, And if I have anything to offer, I want to give that freely. And so at Friendship, that I've been involved in different ministries of the church, because I've been there now since 1963. And I was at different ministries of the church. I was, trustee. I was treasurer of the church for a while, and mail course, Sunday school, Bible study, and all, so. it has been beneficial to me, you know.
Were you in the military at all?
I spent 4 years in the Air Force. Yeah.
Okay, and from how old were you when you entered the Air Force?
Went to the Air Force in 1953, and I came out in 1957.
Okay, and so tell me about your military service.
Military, I did my basic. I went in during the Korean conflict. I did my basic in Geneva, New York, Sampson Air Force Base in Sampson, New York, and everything was rush then when I went in because it was during the Korean conflict and they need servicemen. And so after I did my basic, they flew us out to Cheyenne, Wyoming. Francis E. Warren Air Force Base in Cheyenne, Wyoming. That's where I went to tech school. I went to tech school. There for, well, I went out there for crypto operator, what I went out there for. But they had ceasefire while I was out there, so they changed it. And so I went through base supply. And from Cheyenne, Wyoming, I went to Ellerton Air Force Base in Houston, Texas. And I worked in my field there. And there was 3 of us that volunteered for overseas. And we volunteered for South Africa. But we didn't realize that there weren't no Air Force bases in South Africa. In fact, about it, they had really, that was the apartheid was going on down there, but we didn't realize that. But the 3 of us that volunteered for overseas, I did get Libya. I went to Libya, and I was there for 13 months.
Libya in Africa?
Libya in Africa, right, in Africa. I was there for 13, and I think King Idris was the king there at the particular time that I was out there because he had living quarters there in Benghazi. And that's, well, my home base in Libya was Wheeler Air Force Base. But I was attached to a ACNW outfit where in Benghazi, and there was approximately 100 of us out there. And it was a remote site. We lived in tents. And when I left there, they was building permanent barracks. But the 13 months that I was over there, we lived in tents. And like I said, it was early aircraft warning. That's the purpose of being out there. And it was a good experience there, dealing with the Libyan people and whatnot, and different cultures and whatnot. And it was a good experience there.
Tell me about some of the experiences that are most memorable to you.
Well, some of the people that I met in service and some of the people that I met while I was in Benghazi, because we used to go uptown in Benghazi, and this one young man that had a shop, because most of the people there, they was Arabs, but this young man, he had migrated from South Africa. He was black, and he had, and I don't know his age, I would say he probably was around 20 years old or whatnot. And we used to go up there and we would talk to him, and I remember my friend and we was go down in the shopping district, and most of the time we never wore our uniforms, but this particular day he and I had uniforms on. And
why would you not have your uniform on typically?
Well, now because people in uniform, a lot of time they are targeted, you know, they look at it. So most time, so we had our uniforms on, and we was in the shopping district, and people was coming out, and they were saying, "Black Americans, Black Americans, Black Americans," because they had never seen Black Americans before. But because this was back in the 50s, and if you watch the news media and whatnot, you never saw black. You know, it's almost as black weren't involved in the war and whatnot. And they did. And my friend, he got offended. And I said, don't be offended. I said, because they have never seen black before. And that's the way they dress up. But the people was very friendly. But in North Africa, they was friendly. And it was a lot of poverty there. But they was proud. They was proud. If the police saw them asking for money or anything like that, they would scold them, you know, and whatnot. And some of the things that I saw really made me feel bad, because where we used to dump our garbage from the kitchen and whatnot, and they would be clamoring for it. And somebody made one remark, and it really did upset me. You know, I said, don't you have any compassion for people, you know? I said, here you are. I said, you have all of these different things, and these people have nothing, you know, and all. But it was a good experience. I would really like to go back over there if things was different than they are now, but it's so much turmoil. But to be able to visit those different countries and whatnot and see how those people live versus what we live, it was a good experience for me, because I came out of really segregated America then. Not only discriminated, or segregated America. And go over there, and there, when I was there, I had all the freedom in the world. I didn't have to think twice if I wanted to go into a restaurant or whatnot. But even with all of that, I still say this is one of the greatest countries there ever was, you know. The things that we have take for granted is luxury over there, you know, and all. But the freedom that I enjoyed while I was over there, it was really something, because I can remember after I came back to the state, I was assigned to Sampson Air Force Base, I believe it was in Texas. And I was on the bus, and I was in uniform, and we stopped in Biloxi, Mississippi, and that's where we had a rest area. And where I had to go to get service if I wanted a drink or some food or something was a little cubby hole. And I could not pull myself to get off that bus in American uniform and have to go there to get service and whatnot. The bus driver came back several times. He said, don't you want to, you know, but I could not pull myself to get off in American uniform to go there to get a cold drink and whatnot, you know. And that's the reason I say, my experience, it was during peacetime over there. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the freedom, you know.
You didn't have to worry about somebody calling you a nigger boy or just disrespecting you. You didn't have to worry about that.
I didn't, you know, I didn't. You know, I felt like a man. I was treated like a man and respected as a man. So, I didn't. Like I say, and when I went into a restaurant and whatnot, I didn't have to second thought, you know. So no, it was a good experience for me going over there, you know.
So why did you decide not to re-enlist and make it a career?
The reason
military.
My intent was, after I got in, to make it a career, but it was ceasefire and all the rank was frozen. I mean that I couldn't move up in rank. My AFSC, I could have moved up in rank, but the rank was frozen, so therefore I came out. In fact about it, I tried to volunteer for the military earlier, back in, after I left college and went to Florida. my cousin and I went down and we volunteered for the Army. But they had a quota system then. I passed everything. I passed all of the tests and whatnot, but they had a quota system. They only allowed so many African Americans in at that particular time. So when the Korean War started, then they wanted to draft me, and I didn't want to go in the Army. I wanted to go, I would have gone to the Navy or the Air Force. So I went down, I was here then in Warren. So I went down and I volunteered for the Air Force. But had I been able to go in 1950, yeah, I think 1950 or 51, I probably would have stayed in, but I would have been in the whole Korean conflict then. So that's the reason I went in. And fact about it, I wasn't drafted until 1953, because 1953 when I should have been getting out of college, and college students, they deferred them. So, but so that's the reason I went down and volunteered for that, to the Air Force. I knew I didn't want any part of the Army.
So thank God you never had to go to war.
No, I never had to go to war. It was peacetime. Like I said, when I was in tech school out there, they had ceasefire then, and they changed. A lot of people went in for different things, but they had to change them because they didn't need it then. So you had to, accept whatever they needed. But it was good experience. It was good experience. Those 4 years that I put in the military, at that particular time, financially, it didn't help me a lot. But my experience, though.
So why did it not help you financially? They didn't pay soldiers that much money back then?
No. The people that didn't go in, who was in my age bracket and whatnot, they had accumulated a lot more than I, materially. But like I say, with the experience I got, I wouldn't trade it for nothing, No, it was good, yeah.
Great. Okay, one last question. The civil rights movement in the 60s, what do you remember the most about the civil rights movement? Did you participate in the civil rights movement? Give me your viewpoint on that.
No, I was an active participant in the civil rights movement myself. But yeah, definitely I remember it, the civil rights movement.
Did you wear afro?
No, I never worn an afro. Some people have suggested back then that I would wear an afro, but I never worn one. My brother and I, neither one of us would wore afros there. But no, I definitely remember the civil rights movement and the benefits of the civil rights movement. In fact about it, when I came out of the service in 1957, I remember some changes had been made because I was on the bus and I was coming from Georgia, and I think they had desegregated the buses, at least in, I believe it was Kentucky, but not, I don't think it wasn't in Georgia, but it was in Kentucky, I believe it was there. And so, but yeah, definitely I remember the benefits of that, because I can remember in traveling, because usually after we had migrated from Georgia here, that we would go south at least like once a year. And if you didn't pack a lunch, there was no place for you to eat unless you got off the main highway and go back, and all. And I remember my brother Emery, that lived on the east side of Warren, and taking his family down, and he had his children, and a lot of time they would want to stop at a restaurant, and he had to pretend that he didn't see the restaurant, and then he would go past it. He said, oh my goodness. He said, I've gone past it. We'll stop in maybe at the next one. But he knew that he couldn't get service there. unless he went around to the back or someplace like that. Yeah, so, yeah. So when things open up, yeah, it was a lot better, you know. When you are denied the basics of life like that, it just makes life miserable, hard for you know, especially when you have children. And if you're a man or woman with children and you're supposed to be a father and whatnot, and why is it that someone else can go into the front and you got to go in the back to get your whatnot, you know, where they keep the garbage and the trash and stuff, you know, so, yeah, 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 that civil rights movement, yeah, it has, yeah.
Well, our race has come a long way when you think about it, for us to have even had an African American president of the United States.
It has. It has come a long way. Right, it has. Now, when I go back to Georgia and I can see the changes that made, like when I walk in the courthouse, I can see African Americans behind desks and whatnot, you know. And when I walk into a store, that I'm treated as sir and whatnot, you know. Not that I'm more, but I'm equal, you know. So yeah, it has. You know, oh my goodness, if people say they can't see the benefits of that, you know, as an African American, you must have had your head in sand or someplace, you know. But yeah, it has. Even though there are still changes to be made.
Yes, still
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah, it's still a lot. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But
Was there anything else that you can think of that you might want to talk about? Because the interview has been terrific.
yeah, well, it's well, well, it just about covered it. You know, like I say, for me, migrating to Warren and all, and my experience in Warren, it's been good. It has been good. You know, I was able to raise my family and take care of my family and whatnot, and really, it, and my whole purpose of leaving Georgia was to seek better opportunities because they just weren't there when I was there. I mean, if you weren't an educator or in the ministry, that was just about it, you know. As far as anything else, you had nothing to do with the administration of the city or whatnot and all of the jobs and the benefits and whatnot. They weren't there for you. And so that's the reason I can understand that a lot of people are migrating back south now because there are some opportunities there and whatnot.
Yeah, isn't that something how times have changed?
Yeah.
Before everyone was going north, now mostly everyone is going south.
South, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I would like to thank you so much, Mr. Dawson. This has been amazing.
Well, you are welcome. You have it cut off?